very disappointing Austria weekend for us. It was a weekend of promise. The car was very quick in that race pace trim, not as much on single lap, which is something we need to really work into. But we walk away with nothing and a double DNF. In terms of what happened across the course of the weekend, what we could see was on a long run, so effectively in the race conditions, our car was quick. It was very much there and in a position where it can earn points. But we weren't able to get the single lap out of it, the qualifying condition, as much as other teams were. There were other teams, conversely, very quick on one lap, but not as performant when it came to the race trim. Now, we have some clues and directions as to why it's not the first weekend. We saw the same across the number of weekends prior to that. It looks like on these softest compounds, we're really not quite extracting everything yet. And we have a few experiments for later in the year when those compounds reappear. Silverstone, of course, they'll be slightly harder. So I hope, anyway, certainly a direction will be provided to us if we're able to return to a normal service and qualify well. In terms of Carlos and Alex, both damaged their floors in qualifying. They ran just a little bit wide in a few areas. In the case of Alex, it was turn 7. In the case of Carlos, it was turn 9, which then from then onwards, the floor was damaged enough that we're talking over a second of loss of performance. There was nothing more that could be done. And that's disappointing and painful because the car's still fundamentally quick in its guise. If we go into the race, even then, I was still full of promise that we'd be able to score points with both cars, despite Carlos starting at the back. That's just how quick the car was. In the case of Carlos, as you saw, we had that very significant brake issue, which resulted in the rear brakes holding pressure, and as he did his lap, it just caught on fire and it was game over from then onwards. In the case of Alex, it was an issue really around cooling the PU. This isn't a Mercedes power unit problem. This is very much on us as Williams, and it's something we have to rectify very, very quickly. My summary overall is this. We still, halfway through the season, have a competitive car. We're not getting it all together and all right necessarily in a qualifying condition, but you can't make car pace from nothing, and that remains. However, very clearly, we're not getting it all together across weekends. And what Silverstone represents, which is where we are now, is a line in the sand where we do a reset. I believe in momentum, and I believe in fundamentally just taking time to ourselves, take a breath, and go back into it. We need to build a reliable car, operate it in the correct way, get the strategy right, get the pit stops right. And when we do, the points will start coming back towards us. And that's on us to make sure we accomplish that. We have 13 races in front of us. That's more than half the season remaining. And I believe we can score more points than we did in the first half. That's how confident I am in the package we have today and what's coming to our car in the future. Welcome to the Vowles Verdict, presented by Kraken. First question straight in there, what issues did Alex and Carlos suffer from? So I presume this is more in the race, so we'll answer that as a question. In terms of Carlos, when he was on the grid and went to leave the grid, he found that the car wouldn't move. And what we saw was that the rear brake circuit was effectively engaged. He was holding rear brake pressure, large rear brake pressure. A reset eventually fixed that, but in that process we did a number of other changes, and I think some have been negative overall. With Carlos, he thought he had to make up time to get back in the pit lane so we could start the race, and he was actually pushing the brakes awfully hard, and they were ramping up in temperature quite significantly, and you saw the effect of that as he came back in. Now, it's a number of faults here, really. First and foremost, we had a fundamental hardware fault that meant that the rear pressure could be held on. It's a very unique circumstance of being on the grid, holding pressure during certain procedures, but irrespective, it's been found, captured, and that won't ever happen again. Even beyond there, though, I feel that how we worked with Carlos in our communication, we need to step up, because we could have helped him come back to the pit lane, reset the problem, and still be in the race. Now, that's on us to make sure we work on as a result of it. Clearly, it's always a stressful situation when you have an unknown fault and problem, but I always like to reflect on what could have been and how do we apply that learning through absolutely everything else we do. And in this circumstance, there's absolutely learning that we could have gone back and used, and we can use in our future. In terms of Alex, everything was looking good. You could see the car performance was good. We went for a pit stop, then post-pit stop. What we could see is we were just starting to get into an issue with car cooling. Now, it's not a situation of something failing within the car. It's not that the bodywork was too closed, which is how you adapt to that. It was simply a large step up in about 20 seconds, and we had to retire the car to protect the PU. That's still a PU we'll be using later on in the year. Now, exactly why is still being diagnosed and to be understood. It's disappointing because it's obviously a complex system and one we've been tuning across for a period of time, but disappointing only as much as there was a lot of potential to score great points on Sunday. The way we work through all of these problems is diligently getting to the root cause, not jumping to conclusions, but making sure we dig deep enough to actually completely understand the full scope of the problem. And some of them just take a little bit longer than others. In terms of the brakes, I'm confident that that's behind us. In terms of the cooling system, there's still more work to be done. A very complex part of the car, and there are changes that we'll be carrying out in just a matter of days before we go around at Silverstone, and more changes that will then be in effect from then onwards. We need to make sure that we effectively adapt very quickly so this never happens again. The next question I really enjoy: what have we learned from the weekend? So on the face of it, we had a double DNF and we didn't make it past 16, 17 laps of the race, but actually there's a whole heap of learning in it. We did a number of experiments in FP3, which I'm really pleased with how the team executed, allowing us to understand more and more how to get performance out of those really soft compounds in a qualifying condition. Now, we're not there yet, but there's some good direction that we found across this last weekend. We certainly worked on getting a fast race car, and I know it's difficult to see, but hopefully you saw that we were there behind George in the Mercedes, and even post-stop quicker again. So the car pace was there in a long run condition, and that's good learning that again has future applications. And even these failures provide learning, every single one. If you dig into them into enough depth and get to real root cause, that allows you to improve in not just that area, but a whole heap of areas of our organization. So there's plenty of learning. The question here is the team focused on 26 or more on 2025? And the answer is it depends on which part of the organization you're talking about. If you're talking about aerodynamics and even design, their focus is 2026. Conversely though, operations are still working on some performance to come to the car, and trackside obviously is just focused on this year with some learning being applied to next year. Now that's not quite true. So for example, we're running simulator sessions with the drivers, which is on 2026, and for that we'll still use some of our trackside team. So as you can see, it's in some circumstance split, but still the trackside team's job is to extract everything we can from this year's car. But really, the question I think is more broadly focused: where's the team's centre of mass? Clearly that is in 26 and beyond, because that's what we need to make a clean step forward relative to other competitors. However, please don't misunderstand us. We go to every single Grand Prix weekend wanting to get the most out of it. And when we have these large reliability issues, there's still issues that can impact us on the future, so we fix today to make sure they're not in place for much longer. Good question on how you bounce back. For me, it's straightforward. I relish the opportunity to keep improving as an organization, and we have, as I see it, 13 opportunities in front of us now to not just match what we did earlier in the year, but improve on what we have learned and how we operate the car, how we operate in a low fuel condition in qualifying, how we operate in high fuel, how we communicate to each other, how we do our pit stops, how we do our strategy. It's 13 singular opportunities that we need to take every single one of and make sure we walk away in a better place than where we started. So answering your question, the way you get through the tough weekend that was Austria is focus on our future, because it's bright. Simple answer of this: every track that we go to, shout your lungs out for us. Just make sure you're supporting Alex, Carlos and the team on every occasion and possibility you can. It means far more than perhaps you even realise. We have something fantastic this week in central London called a fan zone. We do them in a number of different places. We did them, for example, in Barcelona. And it's our real opportunity to connect with our fan base. And trust us, the energy that you provide comes across and makes a difference to us.